I can still picture that day like it happened this morning. It was one of those quiet afternoons when even the air seemed held, but something felt off. Tension hummed between us, even though we sat in the same room. She, as usual, was absorbed in her phone, scrolling through messages or whatever else had her attention. I just sat there, trying to make sense of the pieces, knowing something was wrong but not able to name it. She had always been a little dismissive of how I felt. Not cruel, not loudly so, but the dismissal threaded through our relationship. My loneliness, which I had always been open about, became a running joke to her. It began as light teasing. "You're too lonely to leave, aren't you?" She would laugh, and I would shrug it off. Over time the jokes sharpened into mockery, and the mockery became cutting. That afternoon she looked at me with a smirk and said, "You're just too lonely to leave. You'll never get out of this. You're stuck in your own head." The words hurt, but worse was how true they sounded to me. I knew I was in a bad place, and hearing it from her felt like confirmation. My loneliness had kept me tethered here. She knew it. I remember nights away, wondering how much longer I could keep pretending. But what was the point of leaving? I had nowhere solid to go. I couldn't picture life without her, even knowing how little she seemed to value me. I didn't have the courage to walk away. The loneliness she ridiculed was all I had. Then things shifted. It wasn't a single moment. It was slow, subtle, but one day I noticed she wasn't coming home on time. Excuses multiplied. I was working late, I needed space. I felt something slipping from me. At first I told myself it was a rough patch. The patch didn't heal, it widened. Whispers reached me from mutual friends, hints that she was seeing someone else. My stomach turned every time I heard them, but I never confronted her. I was still the one too lonely and too frightened to face the truth. One night she didn't come home at all. I waited, staring at the door for hours, expecting her to walk in. She didn't. The next morning she returned different, colder. There were no laughs, no jokes, just an emptiness in her gaze I hadn't noticed before. "Where were you last night?" I asked, voice shaking more than I meant. She shrugged, casual. "Out. Out with him." The words slipped from my mouth before I could stop them. Her eyes flickered for the briefest instant, and that was enough. I didn't need more proof. Her face told me everything. When I confronted her, it didn't unfold how I imagined. There was no confession, no pleading. Instead she snapped, angered. "You're so obsessed with your loneliness you don't see what's happening around you," she said. "You're too afraid to leave, stuck in your misery." I had no reply. The truth was already there. I had been too lonely to leave, and now I was paying for it. Weeks later she moved out. I sat alone in our empty apartment, the silence heavier than anything before. I tried to move forward, but nothing filled the space she left. I felt numb, drained of the energy to care. Then she called. I almost didn't pick up, but something made me answer. "I need your help," she said, voice cracking. My heart lurched. She sounded small, vulnerable. "What happened?" I asked, though a sinking feeling told me the answer. "I lost everything," she said, trembling. "My job, my apartment. I'm living in my car." I was stunned. The woman who had everything, the same one who mocked me for being too lonely to leave, was now the one who had nothing. She kept talking, voice breaking. "I was so sure of everything. Now I have nowhere." Part of me wanted to say yes, to be the person I used to be for her. Another part, the part bruised by her cruelty, was distant and cold. I had learned the hard lesson that some people don't change, and I refused to fall into that trap again. "I can't help you," I said, steady and firm. "You made your choices, and now you have to live with them." There was a long silence. Then she said, "I didn't think it would end like this. I thought I could have everything." I hung up without another word. That was the end. She had mocked my loneliness, and now she was the one caught in the emptiness she once ridiculed. Her career, her home, her pride, gone. She had become the person trapped in the very void she had once laughed at.